Italian Wine Podcast. Chin Chin with Italian wine people.
Hello, my name is Monty Waldin. This is the Italian Wine Podcast. I'm with John Baum, who's a wine importer based in London. John, you specialise in Italian wine. Why is that? Why is that the case?
Well, it goes back a few years about how I started to get interested in wine itself. I started off because a friend of my father's was in the wine trade for many years. I was interested in perhaps doing some work in wine. He offered me a vintage, which turned out to be Montalcino.
A harvest?
Yeah, a harvest. For Giugi Sesti at Castel di Aggiano. I spent a few weeks out there, had a great deal of fun. I got to taste some interesting wines and really it started there.
How old were you?
I was 20.
Oh, quite young.
Then the next year I went to Chianti Classico where I started to work with really my wine mentor, which is Sean O'Callaghan, formerly of Riecine. I also worked with the likes of Tom Shrobrook, a few other producers from around Europe. This was kind of a place where I was able to go out and buy lots of rare, interesting bottles at this time in the early 2000s. They were quite cheap. We would go home, we would cook dinner, we would drink Barolos, we would drink stuff from the south, from the centre, and that's how we all learned about wines.
So, I mean, the companies that you own at the moment, what exactly is your structure?
I would say I'm quite chaotic with these things. We have the importing and distribution business, which deals, I'm very proud to say, with some fantastic restaurants, mainly in London. And then we have the bar in Farringdon, which works the shop in the day, a good office space for us to do our deliveries, etc. from. And in the evening, the bar takes over. And recently we opened in Deptford as well, which is more of a restaurant idea, matching to some extent our wines with our food.
Okay, so these are all in London, right?
They're all in London.
So just going back to, what we like at school, did you ever think you could enter the wine trade when you were at school? You presumably went to school in the UK, right?
I did. I think from the age of 19, I suppose, I always knew I was going to be in the wine trade. I still went to university, but I went knowing that when I left, I would be going into the wine business.
What did you study at university?
Religion and theology.
Oh, I did history and English. I was the same as you. I knew I worked in my first vineyard before going to university. Knew I'd never use my university degree and went off to Bordeaux as soon as I'd finished. So you ended up in Italy as soon as you finished, yeah?
Right.
Yeah, so how good was your Italian then?
Awful, I didn't have any.
How good is it now?
Passable some days. Just depends how much I use it and obviously how many glasses I've had. But yeah.
So how easy is it dealing, being a Brit abroad, so to speak, dealing with Italian producers and making them understand what you want as someone that's going to sell their wine, and then how can they communicate with you what they want from you as a business?
I'm very truthful with our producers, so I don't haggle with my producers. I go in there, and if I taste a wine and I see the price, and the wine I think is worth the price, I'm not going to push a producer down. There's no point, it's their livelihood. Most of our producers make between 10 to 80, 90,000 bottles a year in total production.
Very small.
Yeah, they can't afford to be pushed on price. They're trying to earn a living like we are here as well. And how do I communicate with them? Well, I have decent enough Italian to get by now, and in the early days I had friends with me who were sort of stronger on the language than I was.
So what are your personal favourites in terms of wine styles from, we're talking all of Italy or just mainly Tuscany?
All over Italy. I mean, I'm much fonder of traditional methods of winemaking than I am about modernity. I've been very happy to see in the last decade that people realising this and changing back to the way things were. I'm not a big fan of using massive amounts of new oak, smaller barrels in situations like this. I like to think that Italy is evolving in winemaking by going backwards rather than forward.
Okay, so what about, the whole organic biodynamic thing? Is that important to you, or is it important to your customers?
It's important to me. I'm not really an importer who talks about it very much. I don't believe it's actually that. I believe it's very important, but I don't think it's important to use it sort of marketing, chit-chatting, pushing yourself, arguing that your wines are quality because they're organic. That just annoys me. I think the wine should speak for itself always. And I think, although I am considered in London to be part of the natural wine situation, I am never happy using the term natural wines. I don't think it explains anything, it doesn't mention anything, it doesn't say anything about the wines. So, it's important for me personally because it's healthy living. You don't want to eat food that's been sprayed with chemicals going into your body. Why do you want to do it with wine? It just seems to me common sense. Our soil is there right now. If we kill it off, it's not there for our kids or our grandkids.
So what about sort of trends in Italian wine at the moment, say in the classic areas like Chianti, which for my money is one of the most underrated appellations in the world in terms of food friendliness? What are you seeing happening in Chianti? What's exciting there now and why?
I think because Chianti's in a funny position right now because, as you say, it's not necessarily as fashionable as it was. So less outsiders are coming in, putting money and buying estates, which means in turn there are many estates suddenly up for sale or warehouses up for sale. Space for people to go and make wine who couldn't afford to do it previously. Land has dropped a lot in price. You find land in crazy places like Maremma being more expensive than Chianti Classico, and you think, why? But what do I see? Hopefully we'll be seeing some producers who may have been struggling over a long time to be able to find a true expression of themselves because they've had to work for bigger corporations, big companies, recipe winemakers, suddenly actually being able to make something which they believe is an expression of their region, of their zone.
So you think the kind of garage yeast, what's called the garage yeast movement in France, is now going to take off in Italy as well?
Well, I hope so. I do hope so. I mean, I think if premises are affordable, food is affordable.
The premises, you mean like a small building in which to make the wine?
I mean, warehouse costs are actually not too bad in a lot of areas in Chianti.
And fruit are the wine grapes?
Yeah.
So in terms of the terroir there, I mean, what gets you excited? I mean, like talk about these soils like Galestro or schist and things like that. Why do they make Chianti so special when you can find those places and wines from those places? In terms of the texture, the taste, the flavours.
Do you mean what's planting if you planted Sangiovese anywhere else?
No, when you go and taste wines, what do you love about the Sangiovese from that particular area?
Well, as I say, I'm a classicist. I like elegance in those wines. I don't want massive concentration. I enjoy altitude still. I mean, global warming is occurring, we know this. So we can go higher and higher up. And there still are vineyards which 20, 30 years ago people would not have used because they'd be too green.
Because the grapes wouldn't ripen, it was too cool, yeah?
But now you've got 700 metre Sangiovese in Gaioli, which is beautiful. 600 metre stuff in Montalcino suddenly working. This is the exciting thing, things moving forward and getting more elegance, and getting more balance from the wines, not working on just pure concentration of fruit and oak, and bringing out the expression of the terroir.
So what about white wines, white Italian wines? Where are you looking there for your little niche?
For whites, I always try and look for varietals which are perhaps a little less known. I've always done that with red wines, and the exception of being Tuscany. So, for example, when I started out and I took over the business about 9 years ago, it was important to stand out. So one of the ways of doing that was to move away from my sort of safety net of Tuscany and move around. So you ended up going up to various areas, trying to find interesting grape varieties that nobody else had.
What up into Piemonte you're talking about?
Well, Piemonte, so Oberluce, for example.
So do you see what you're doing as almost like a crusade to save some of these forgotten or ignored but magical grape varieties like Oberluce?
I mean, I wouldn't say it's a crusade. It's just that to keep it more selfish, actually. For me, wine is continuous intervention. So you always have to find something new, strive to find something different, and to try and learn from that as well as time goes on. Yeah, that's probably more of the interest for me than actually crusading and running out there and throwing these bottles into people's faces and forcing them to go on. The great thing about having 2 bars is that I can do that as well.
But does that help you when you've obviously brought a wine in and you can actually see somebody drink it or taste it in front of you and they give you feedback? How can that be a confusing thing or a helpful thing?
No, it's helpful. Always helpful. There's some people, regular customers you acquire, palates you learn to trust or understand in some way. It also it's useful for you as an importer, because instead of spending 6 months on the road trying to sell the wine that some people might like, some people won't, you've got an audience straight away and you get that feedback straight away and you know if you're on the right track and if you're doing the right thing. So far, it's been okay.
What about southern Italy? Do you venture south?
Yeah, I do, but I'm not a massive fan of some of the more famous regions. Puglia has, I think, great potential, but I do think they sort of championed the wrong varietal.
What, you mean in Primitivo? Or what? Really?
Yeah, I think Negro Amaro is far more interesting as a grape variety.
Why? Because it's easier to drink?
No, I think there's slightly more complexity in the grape variety itself. I think Primitivo, it's people are focusing a lot on the fruit ripeness of it, the richness of it.
Making big, heavy wines.
Yeah, well, Negro Amaro seems to have a rusticity to it, a tannin content, like a lot of the great old noble varietals did. And I had the same problem slightly with Aliano. That's why I spend more time, I'm more interested in Calabria. I think Calabria is probably the most interesting place in the south. And Basilicata's got some very interesting stuff.
So when you go down to Calabria, I mean, how obviously it's quite a remote, special.
The motorway ends in Calabria.
Yeah, right. It's a very specialised area, should we say? I mean, how when you go down there, you're a little bit sort of nervous, or are you happy, or excited, or?
And I waited a good few years to go down there for nervousness, but then, to be honest, when I arrived, I was treated very, very well. Right. And there's a great food culture down there, fantastic. Yeah. I mean, it's one of the best I've seen in Italy. I mean, there's a bit of chili in there, there's a lot of fresh seafood, and they look up to a lot of the other areas, and they in some way replicate it in their own way. And there's great indigenous grape varieties. I mean, predominantly you're going on the reds, but I mean, Gaglioppo is a difficult one, of course it is, but Magliocco on the other side has serious potential, and there's some great people making wines with it as well.
John Baum from the Winemakers Club in London, a much-travelled man, looking slightly grizzled as well with your...
Yeah, well, champagne has that effect on you.
Well, I don't want to mention champagne. You've got a pop star hairstyle, but that's great. It's great to see you, and also great to find out what you're up to with your wine bars. It's lovely. You can actually, as you say, see people consume what you're bringing in, drink the wine in front of you, and you get direct feedback.
Well, one of the greatest things an importer can ever see is when they sit in a restaurant and they see another table they don't know drinking their wine. That really is one of the most uplifting things.
Brilliant. John Baum from the Winemakers Club in London, thanks very much for coming in today on the Italian Wine Podcast.
Follow Italian Wine Podcast on Facebook and Instagram.